Hey everybody, and welcome to another video in this lecture series for social psychology. This video's lecture is going to be on attraction. Attraction, okay. And so we're going to talk about how, potentially intimate and or close relationships do come together and the reasons for those things. It is not necessarily going to be about friendship, though your book does talk about friendship in this context because you can both be attracted to a mate, but you can also be attracted to a friend. Somebody who will have your back, that kind of thing. So here is very tiny. I should have made that. I should have made this much bigger. It's so much more room. Ugh. Slide design. Rough. Anyways, what we're going to talk about is interpersonal attraction. So, one person being attracted to another for whatever reason. We're going to talk about those reasons. So, who are we attracted to? To whom are we attracted? Those are the P variables, person or the perceiver. O variables, the other. P by O variables, this is the interaction between the perceiver and the other. And then E variables, environmental variables. We'll talk about each of those things in kind as we go through this. Hooray! Okay, so who are we attracted to? All right, well, what is attraction? It's the desire to approach or be with someone. Now, be with someone is appropriately vague. It's vague for lots and lots of reasons. Be with somebody. What does that mean? Well, it's up to you. It's up to you. It's up to you. So, another way we can put it is that attraction is a motivational state which we are predisposed to think, feel, and behave positively toward another person. So, positive interactions is really how attraction works here. So, think, feel, and behave, our ABC model, and these are all positive toward another person. Okay, so let's talk about to whom are we attracted? So who are these people? Who are these people? And we're going to couch this within reinforcement theory. So what is rewarding? What is rewarding? Well, things about the people we find rewarding, whether they be their personal characteristics, the fact that they have tangible resources or they can get tangible resources, they can have indirect means of those resources because that will help you get those resources. And then other things that are rewarding are associated with that person. And so it becomes a feature of classical conditioning. Okay, so things like that. That is what we are going to couch each of these variables within. Okay, so what influences what we find rewarding? Well, I said the P variables, so that's you. E stands for perceiver, but we're just going to say that's you. And so I'm going to say you a lot for these slides. O is for the other. Okay, that's what O stands for, other. So your potential partner and their things about them. Okay. The interaction of you and the potential partner. Okay, so fit, compatibility, what's the deal with all of that? Okay, and then E variables, which are the environment or context. So let's go through each of these one at a time. E variables. Yeah, if you could please respond to my friend request on Facebook rather than leaving it, that would be great. You need to see Office Space to get this meme, but that is what that meme is. And it's a dated meme. It's a dated reference because who goes on Facebook anymore? I don't know. You probably don't, viewer of this video. So, what are the aspects of you that determine who you are attracted to? Well, your personality, first and foremost. Part of our personality is this need for affiliation, and this is a continuum of need So we either have high need for affiliation or we have low need for affiliation. But for the most part, we have a need for affiliation. And so that is going to dictate how we want to interact with people. Okay. And this goes into what is called a social motive. It's a motivation for being social because we do not want to be lonely. Loneliness can kill you. And so loneliness is the mismatch between your social interactions and the ones that you want. So the ones that you have versus the ones that you want. Obviously, the ones that you have are less than the ones that you want, which leads to loneliness. And loneliness has severe consequences for your health and your well-being. So just be aware of that, right? Another social motivation that we have is to indicate what it is that we are looking for in a person. And so we actually have to think about that. And then this leads us to moving on in other ways. Okay. So additionally, personality, biology plays a role. Okay. So sex differences. Humans are generally speaking sexually dimorphic, but there are differences, individual differences in that sexual dimorphism that play into various things. But for the most part, I do want to take an evolutionary stance on these sex differences. So the central hypothesis is that sexual reproduction requires different resources and different amounts of resources from males and females. That's what is called a parental investment. Okay. Parental investment. Fertilization requires minimal male investment, but produces a long-term female investment, which also comes with risks and precludes other mating opportunities, right? Because we have gestation, we have birth, we have lactation, we have further nurturing, further protecting, and further feeding of children, because humans are weak as children. We are weak, okay? Trivers and Buss came up with the theory of parental investment and sexual selection, and it predicts that the sex investing more in offspring, so usually a female, will be more discriminating for those they are attracted to, and the sex investing less in offspring, usually males, will be more competitive for sexual access to the high investing sex. So those are the two features of parental investment and sexual selection. Okay. We can also take a social structural explanation. So, for sex differences reflect people's efforts to maximize utilities in societies in which utilities are constrained by social gender marriage roles. So, for example, focus is on men's selection for domesticity and youth. I recently saw a meme that Leonardo DiCaprio does not date women over 25. And it was a chart of all of his partners from the late 90s till now, and nobody grows older than 25. Strange. Women select for earning capacity and older age. So those are the traditional ideas for social gender marriage roles and utilities. Okay. Now what else did I want to say about that? No, nothing. Now, physiological arousal can also be the reason why you're attracted to somebody. Okay. And we can talk briefly about excitation transfer theory. I'll show you a bridge here in just a second. This is the Capilano Canyon Bridge in Canada, Vancouver, just outside of Vancouver, British Columbia. And then you can see that it is a suspension rope bridge. Okay. And Dutton and Aaron in 1974 had an idea about emotion and the diffusiveness of arousal. And they're like, let's have dudes go meet either a male or a female experimenter on either this bridge or a stable bridge, like that's low to a creek bed, right? And it was made out of steel or whatever. So the subjects in the study were only men, okay? And they had to approach either a male experimenter or a female experimenter on one of two bridges, right? So the sex of the experimenter was the first manipulation, so the first independent variable. And then the bridge was either the Capilano Canyon bridge or the very sturdy steel right over a creek bed bridge. Okay. So this was the neutral bridge condition. Okay. So we have four conditions. So male or female experimenter on a scary bridge or a neutral bridge. Okay. And they measured a few things. So on the bridge, they had the participant complete the thematic apperception tests, which used an image that was suggestive in nature, sexually suggestive in nature. And for a TAT, if you've never seen a TAT before, so it's an ambiguous image that you have to create a story for. And so these men wrote stories on the bridge. They filled out some questionnaires. And the experimenter then handed them a phone number and said, if you have any more questions about this study, please do not hesitate to call me at the lab. Well, the phone number that they gave just went to the lab, answering machine. And of course, the experimenter wasn't going to be there. What they were trying to determine is whether or not the males were asking for the female experimenters, which would then lead to this as a proxy measure for the attractiveness and the sexual arousal of the male participant. Okay. And so here is what you see. So we have the two bridges on the x-axis, and then the two different color bars are for male experimenter and female experimenter. And the y-axis is the percentage of the participants in each of those conditions that called the lab afterward. Okay, that called the lab afterward. And so you can quite plainly see that very few of the men called the male experimenter or the female experimenter in the control bridge, in that very sturdy, low to the ground bridge. But then you can see quite a huge difference, almost more than a 20% difference in the men who called the female experimenter versus who called the male experimenter on the Capilano Canyon bridge. And so what is the explanation for this? Well, it's a pretty easy explanation. It's actually the misattribution of arousal. So the people on this bridge find it to be quite thrilling, exhilarating, scary, fear, except all of those things, right? And so the arousal that your body creates for that fear is then misattributed in a person's head automatically to thinking that they found the person that they were talking to sexually attractive. Okay. I paused there for you to fill in the blanks yourselves, right? So they found that person sexually attractive, even though really it was probably the fact that they were on a scary ass bridge that could have toppled them over. It can't at any moment, right? So just, yeah, misattribution of arousal. So if you want to take somebody on a date, listen to science. Take them to scary movies. Okay. Action or scary movies. Really great. Really great. Okay. Scary movies versus a romantic movie. And you think, oh my gosh, that's counterintuitive. No, romantic movies are just going to make you feel awkward and like give you false hope or false perception about how things are going, and you don't want that. You don't want that. You don't need that. Okay. In Cohen, Waugh, and Place, couples were more likely to talk and touch after an action movie than after a documentary. Okay. Now, if you were at the zoo, where would you predict the greatest misattribution? In front of camels, ibex, baboons, or polar bears? Oh my. Well, Dragon, DeBacker, Moore, and Reed said the number and length of touches were highest among couples watching exciting animals. So camels, not that exciting. Take them to the baboons. And finally, take people to amusement parks. Take your date to an amusement park and make sure you go on the roller coasters. Okay? So Meston and Froelich ask people to rate a person in a photograph as more attractive or less attractive, or more desirable, less desirable after getting off a roller coaster compared to just before getting on it. And what they did was they rated that person as more attractive and more desirable after getting off than compared to just before getting on that ride. Okay, so date ideas. Your helpful matchmaker, Dr. Swan. That's me. I'm wearing red just for the occasion. Now, other variables. Variables. These are variables about the other person, your potential partner. Okay. And of course, number one is physical attractiveness. This is always going to be number one. It's one of the stronger predictors of initial attraction. So what's the evolutionary perspective on this? And I gotta say, even babies prefer beauty. Even babies prefer better looking people. So what's the evolutionary idea? Okay, well, good looks tend to mean good health and potentially good genes. Physical appearance is related to health. Pathogens and illness make us look awful. We look sickly, pale, dark circles under our eyes, blotchy skin, right? Okay. Female body shape also has a correlation to reproduction. So waist hip ratio of 0.7 is found to be the most attractive from both men, women, and other genders. Sort of coalesces on 0.7. Okay. And so different waist to hip ratios tend to reflect healthy or unhealthy lifestyles and genetic tendencies for carrying weight. Okay, and carrying weight may come with health risks. And it may come with health risks. May not be. Okay. So there are a lot of evolutionary reasons why we find somebody physically attractive versus why we don't find somebody physically attractive. Social stereotypes are another explanation for physical attractiveness. Why do we value beauty? Well, attractive people tend to be more socially skilled. What comes first, chicken or the egg? It's hard to tell. And so it's just a correlation. Indirect benefits come from association with pretty people. Okay. There is a specific stereotype. What is beautiful is good. Okay. We believe that attractive people are friendly, successful, happy, healthy, strong, all of these things. Okay. And there was even a large meta-analysis on this. I should put this up. What beautiful is good. Dion Burscheid and Walster. There was a meta-analysis on this, so linked to a significant amount of actual incomes. Okay, so attractive people, both children and adults, were judged more favorably on almost every dimension that was tested across all of these studies. So, and it's equally true for men and for women. Attractive people were found to be more popular and earned more money. Only those related to popularity and interpersonal skills, more dates, more active sex lives, more opposite sex friends. Okay. The beauty stereotype extends to the workplace. Attractive people are more likely to be hired after an initial interview and receive a higher rate of pay. Attractive criminals receive lower fines. MBA grads from the University of Pittsburgh, rated on a scale from 1 to 5 on attractiveness, were rated on a 1 to 5 scale on attractiveness. Each 1 point increment on that scale, and there aren't very many 1 point increments, but each 1 point increment on that scale was associated with an additional $2,600 in annual pay for men and $2,150 for women. This was in 1991, and so those values are a lot. You can also see the gender wage gap reflected in that. Okay, being in the presence of an opposite sex person for cishet folks who are attractive puts people in good moods, even just looking at their pictures. Wow. Are the stereotypes true? No. No, they're not. What ends up happening is what you see on the slide here: behavioral confirmation, self-fulfilling prophecies. Again, I kind of mentioned it already. These are a lot of chicken or egg bi-directional relationships. Which comes first, being pretty or not, or being good? Like, it's an interesting question to ask, right? So, Snyder, Tonk, and Burscheid did this classic study in 1977. Pairs of men and women interacted over the phone. Physical attractiveness was manipulated. Men were shown a false picture. So they were either shown an attractive picture or an unattractive picture. So half and half. Okay. Conversations were tape recorded and analyzed. And so you can and so these composite women photos, this is great technology in the 1970s. Composite women photos were pre-rated on a scale from 1 to 10, I believe. And so you can see here, this picture was rated by another group of people to be between 6 and 6.4. And then this picture, which is just manipulated from, these are the same facial structure. It's essentially the same woman. But these were rated 4.5 to 4.9. And so these were the photos that were sent to these men. Okay. So when men thought they were talking to an attractive woman, women behaved in more friendly, sociable, and skilled manner. Okay. But men brought out negative attributes in women they thought were unattractive. This plays a big role in determining attractiveness of those around us, right? So we elicit behavior we expect from others. So that's behavioral confirmation. We elicit the behavior we expect from others. Okay. Behavioral confirmation. An additional feature of this is the halo effect. The halo effect. This is when one good attribute or positive attribute is assumed to just be one of many positive traits a person has. So that's the halo, right? A specific reference to Jesus, yes? So that's what the halo effect does. It's one of the biases that is very strong, by the way. It's not as strong as confirmation bias, but it is up there with, how we bias our way through lives, basically. So premature infants are treated better than non-cute. So cuter premature infants are treated better. Young children prefer attractive peers, and this seems to advance all through school years. Teachers see attractive children as more intelligent and potentially successful. and attractive defendants are less likely to be found guilty in jury trials. I mean, it's all over the place. This is not an exhaustive list. I'll tell you what. Okay. So what else? What else? What are the benefits in the long run to physical attractiveness? Well, another Burscheid study in 1972, they obtained ratings of college yearbook photos. That used to be a thing, everyone. Colleges used to make yearbooks for the graduating class. That's just like, whoa. So they obtained those yearbook photos, and then they interviewed those graduates when they were middle-aged, okay? And what they found was that for those who were rated as beautiful, tended to be more likely to marry, okay? But there was no difference in marital satisfaction, life satisfaction, or overall happiness. Are there costs? Yeah. But let's take these costs with a grain of salt, shall we? So, Major found that people who are attractive tend to discount praise because they are aware of their effect of their beauty on others, right? So, however, this, if you think back, is technically attributional ambiguity. We might not be thinking that at all. You might actually want to praise this person, give them a compliment, okay? They also find that it's difficult to trust others and may lower confidence in kind, right? If you can't trust, who can you trust? If you can't trust people, who can you trust? There are some negative stereotypes with beauty. Beauty, vain, shallow, not intelligent. You've probably seen many of those memes and stereotypes. Blonde women, for example, is one of them. And beauty may inspire envy and hostility. P by O variables. So, what brings us together? What's the interaction of you and another? So, is it birds of a feather or opposites attract? It depends. It really depends. So, let's talk about the fantasy model for a second. We think to ourselves what brings us the most joy is to think about the most socially desirable person. Who is that person? I want to be with that person. And then we start thinking about our ideal. Okay? Doesn't generally work out that way. The fantasy model is nice on paper, but generally doesn't turn out that way. I think a more appropriate hypothesis is the matching hypothesis. Okay? We match up with others on the traits and things that we have, the stuff. So social worth, assets. Okay? If we have equal worth, equal assets, then a merger is more successful. So less likelihood either party gets rejected. Okay. That's the matching hypothesis. And what is the biggest feature of the matching hypothesis? Similarity. Again, similarity, and specifically attitude similarity, reflects one of these stronger predictors. How similar are you to the person? So attitudes, values, preferences. And this actually goes in both friends and romantic partner categories. Okay. In Newcomb, 1956, they had a dorm, which was going to be the place of the experiment. They had 2 samples of 17 male students, right? So 34 male students. Free rent in that housing unit, so they could do a longitudinal study. Okay, so the free rent was the compensation for participation of these males in the 1950s. Okay. Attitudes were measured prior to the study by males. So they asked them various questions like, what's your sex, family, religion, politics, all that stuff. So to get a sense of who they were as a person, right? And then they measured attraction over the next 15 weeks weekly. Okay. And you can see from this, I keep hitting the mic, I apologize. You can see from this that a perfect correlation is this line here on attraction. You can see the men as similar attitudes increased, so did attraction along this linear line. Jeez. Along this line. Okay. So why do we care about and why do we value similarity? Well, for one thing, it's reassuring, it's validating, we like it, right? Especially for similarity in goals, you have convergence of those goals, and which comes with a convergence of desires and needs, right? It makes interacting with that person quite easy. Familiarity breeds comfort and security, which are important to our well-being. We get approval from others, like our family, and we anticipate that that person will have greater acceptance of us because we of our huge need to belong. Okay? We're always thinking about rejection because we have a gigantic need to belong. Okay? So, similarity versus complementarity. Okay? So, can't opposites be compatible? That's what I mean here about complementarity. Do the differences complement one another? Don't opposites sometimes attract? Well, there's really no strong evidence for personality, attitudes, or demographics on complementarity, but there is some evidence for complementary behaviors. So one of those behaviors being dominance and the other being submissiveness. And so then we can also talk about Buss's argument for resources. So beauty and a status / rewards trade-off. Resources trade-off. So and I think in approximately the 2000s, so about 10, 15 years ago, Hugh Hefner, which is the old man there, dated younger women, much younger women. There was a show when he had 3 girlfriends. He had a lot of girlfriends here and there, and I believe this is his wife at the time. And so that reflects a trade-off in behaviors. Okay. She comes with the beauty and she gets his money. That's the trade-off that you see in this picture here. They might actually love each other, which is great. It's just an example. Well, he's dead now, but they might have loved each other, and that's great. More power to them. The image that they give, though, is to this complementarity argument, which is why I use them here. Okay. Now, the other part of the matching hypothesis is reciprocity. We like people who like us. Think back to when you were in elementary school, middle school, high school, and you were like, oh, do they like me? Oh, I really hope they like me. Oh, it'd be so great if they like me. I like you. Do you like me? I like you. Do you like me? That's that's reciprocity right there. Okay. It is one of the strongest predictors of attraction. So we have 3. We have attractiveness, similarity, and reciprocity. Shocking, right? If being told that someone likes you, it will produce feelings of reciprocal affection. Even if it ultimately doesn't go anywhere, you will likely feel some sort of like, oh, that's so sweet. Even if it's just that and it doesn't go any higher than that, it generally becomes sweet. However, there are some exceptions. We do not like ingratiators, brown nosers, teachers' pets, these sorts of things. Okay? We don't like that. Excessive flattery decreases attraction to that person. Okay. Nobody wants to risk rejection. Nobody. Desirability equals physical attraction plus the probability of acceptance. How do you increase the probability of acceptance? You can also increase physical attraction too, but how do you increase probability of acceptance? Similarity, reciprocity. Boom. Okay. Boom. Oh, Gil, need. How many can I put you down for? A lot? Please say a lot. I need this. Oh, Gil. All right, last variables. These variables are pretty important, but the first one being proximity, not so much these days. Not so much these days. So proximity is the contact you have with that person, right? So one of the ways that we increase attraction is by having daily interactions. This can be referred to as mere exposure, which we'll talk to you about in just a second with familiarity. So one of the more classical studies on this was Festinger, who was the cognitive dissonance guy. They studied friendships. Pairs of friends were randomly assigned to student housing at the university that they were teaching at. And the distance between apartments was the strongest predictor of friendship. Okay. Strongest predictor. The closer they were, the more often that they saw these people, the stronger that they were friends. Okay. The more often they were friends, more likely they were friends. Okay. So why is proximity a thing? Well, Bussard studied 5,000 marriages in 1931 in Philadelphia. He found that a third of them lived within 5 blocks of one another before they got married, and a half of them lived within 20 blocks. Okay, 20 blocks. Distance is costly, man. Distance is costly. Regardless if you think that we can remove proximity a little bit with the internet, distance is still costly. Long distance relationships tend to be less satisfying and more likely to break because of the fact that you are apart. Even among married people, long distance relationships lead to more divorce. It appears that the phrase absence makes the heart grow fonder is not true in these circumstances. Okay. Familiarity. Familiarity is a piece of proximity here, because the more proximal you are to somebody, the more that you'll run into them and have daily interactions in them, because the way our memory works, you'll be more familiar with these people. Okay. So repeated contact, and we can talk about the mere exposure effect. So a Confederate attended 15, 10, 5, or 0 classes. And then they asked the people in those classes what they thought of this person. More attendance, they had a greater score of liking. Okay. Even in situations of no interaction. Okay. And another one of those phrases that you are familiar with, familiarity breeds contempt. Familiarity does not breed contempt unless the characteristics that are now contentious were unrewarding at the outset. Okay, so if you didn't like something somebody did when you first met them, well, then yes, more exposure to them is just going to increase your dislike or contempt. Okay, but mostly not. So let me show you a video of How I Met Your Mother. Of course, I do enjoy How I Met Your Mother. And in this particular flip. Barney, played by Neil Patrick Harris, is describing to Marshall the Mermaid Theory, which is just a fancy label on the mirror exposure effect.
Marshall, someday you will find Iris so excruciatingly attractive, you won't be able to look her directly in the boobs.
I don't think that's going to be a problem.
Marshall, do you know how the myth of mermaids came to be?
I'm sorry, myth?
It was 300 years ago. Sailors stuck at sea would get desperate for female companionship. It got so bad that eventually the manatees out in the water started to look like beautiful women. Mermaids. Let's go get some tail. You see, every woman, no matter how initially repugnant, has a mermaid clock, the time it takes for you to realize you want to bone her. Sure, today you see Iris as a manatee, but she ain't gonna stay that way. Marshall, your secretary's mermaid clock starts right now.
And it took 1 year, 3 months, and 16 days. But eventually...
No! Told you. The Mermaid Theory. It's a thing. You owe me $500.
Do we bet on this?
Let's say yes.
And that's why we never hang out alone?
Yes, as Lily's best friend, you are the last person on the planet who's allowed to turn into a mermaid.
Wait, does that mean that I'm a manatee right now?
Big time manatee.
Whoa. What were those sailors thinking?
I don't know. Being out at sea can do crazy things to a man.
Okay, so you're afraid that if you spend too much time alone with me, I'll turn into a mermaid?
Yes. I mean, sure, right now you're bald and leathery and covered in a thick layer of blubber.
Am I blushing or?
But at some point, my stupid male brain will transform you into a foxy fish babe singing Part of Your World to my pants.
Okay, well, even if that happens, is there any way to unmermaid me?
I asked Barney the same thing.
Once mermaidified, there's only one way a woman can go back to being unattractive again, but it's pretty gruesome.
Death?
Worse, pregnancy. If a baby's on board that train, it is headed straight back to Manatee City.
So, the gross things from Barney aside, he's only partially right. The mirror exposure effect only works, as I said, for neutral or pleasant stimuli. So in actuality, it would not work for a secretary because he thought she did something with her teeth and that, and he didn't much like Marshall didn't much like that. And Barney mentions that, you know, the amount of disdain that he had for her appearance or something like that. I don't know, something like that within the episode with the clip. You can go back and watch that if you want to. You can do the whole Mermaid Theory in YouTube and find this video again, or rewatch this video and you know, do YouTubeception. The idea is here that there was something unpleasant about Marshall's secretary that Marshall found to be unpleasant, and so mirror exposure wouldn't work in this case. There would not be any mermaid. It's also not how mermaids exist, but you know. Okay. Last couple of variables for the environment. So the physical environment also has to be a factor. Okay. We find others as less attractive if we are in hot, humid rooms. Who doesn't? We find ourselves less attractive. When unpleasant music is playing, when we are experiencing a distressing event, okay, so as one study did, sad movie, like a depressing movie, or if a person is delivering bad news to us. So if you have a crush Do not let them ever give you bad news, because then you're kind of hitting the mic. So reboot that. You'll end up finding them less attractive, and who wants that on a crush, right? Barriers are the last one. Barriers are the last one. So you've probably heard of Romeo and Juliet, right? So the Romeo and Juliet effect is that when a pair of people who potentially love each other end up feeling more attracted to each other if their parents are involved and say, don't do that. So that's why this is the Romeo and Juliet effect, because they're the most famous couple to have their parents involved, and even their huge giant families be involved in the fact that they cannot be together, and then because they can't, that they kill themselves. One person accidentally, the other person on purpose. Right? So why does the Romeo and Juliet effect work? Well, reactance theory, generally speaking, has the explanation. When our freedom is taken away, we're motivated to reestablish it. And that's generally speaking what you see with the anti-mask crowd right now. I don't want to wear a mask because it has something to do with my freedom. And that's not. It's not. So that's reactance theory. When you're told no, you're like, I want to do it even more now. Bottom line is this. Most of the stuff is outside of our awareness. That's what I want to say. So a lot of the attraction stuff is not conscious. There's a large element of chance. Who you come across in your day-to-day lives is going to impact and dictate who you find attractive and the information that you get from those interactions. Okay? What gets us together might not keep us together. Next video, we'll talk about love and other close relationships. So stay tuned for that one. That is it for this video. Please leave your comments and feedback down below. Generate those questions. And I will see you in the next video. Bye.